On my birthday, I got a message from my dead grandpa, and it shattered my world and rebuilt it. It wasn't supposed to be much of a birthday. Just another day ending a year that felt like a decade, filled with the quiet hum of my laptop, the glow of spreadsheets, and the constant low-grade anxiety that came from knowing my phone could buzz at any moment with another urgent financial demand. My parents, Robert and Sarah, and my sister, Caroline, had perfected the art of turning my life into their personal ATM. I was in my early 30s, running a small but successful tech consulting business I'd built from scratch, fueled by caffeine and sheer stubbornness. I'd had to drop out of a prestigious engineering program years ago, a family crisis requiring all hands on deck, which translated to me sinking my college fund and working 2 jobs to cover Robert's increasingly erratic business debts and Sarah's insistence on maintaining a certain social facade. They never repaid me, not a dime. Instead, the demands grew. Caroline, bless her entitled heart, seemed to view my bank account as an extension of her allowance. Luxury apartments, designer clothes, spontaneous trips. If she wanted it, I was somehow expected to fund it. I paid off 3 mortgages for them over the years, took out loans in my name that they swore they'd repay, but never did. My own life, my dreams, relationships, they all withered under the weight of my family's needs, which were always framed as emergencies, non-negotiable. My birthday was just another reminder of where I stood. I saw Caroline's post on social media. A picture of her, mom, and dad at some fancy restaurant, captioned, "Family celebration. So much love." My name wasn't mentioned. A quick text from Sarah earlier had read, "HBD," followed immediately by a question about a bill. Robert hadn't even bothered. It stung, sure, but the deep-seated weariness usually dulled the sharpness. I just focused on finishing a complex project, something that would actually earn me money I needed to cover the rent on my small apartment and send a significant chunk to Robert for his latest investment opportunity. It was just past midnight when my phone buzzed on the desk. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, figured it was a late spam call. But then another buzz, another message. "Happy birthday, Mason. I'm alive." They lied about everything. My heart leaped into my throat, a cold dread washing over me. Who would send something so cruel? Grandpa John. The name flashed in my mind. My mother's father. Dead. Died 3 years ago. Or so they told me. A quiet funeral I couldn't attend because Robert insisted I had to stay to sign some papers for a critical business deal. Another message came through from the unknown number. Estate stolen. $25 million plus. Properties, businesses. It put me away. Help me. My hand started shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. This wasn't a prank. The detail, the number, the message itself. It felt like a punch to the gut, a cold, impossible reality opening up beneath my feet. My grandfather. Dead. Alive? They lied? Took everything? The blood pounded in my ears. What fresh hell was this? Disbelief wrestled with a terrifying certainty. If this was real, if Grandpa John was alive, and they had lied, what else had they done? What else were they capable of? The exhaustion vanished, replaced by a surge of adrenaline and a chilling, icy fury I'd never known. I wouldn't sleep tonight. I had to know. My tech skills, usually used to help clients optimize systems, were now focused with frantic intensity. That unknown number, area code, matched a rural area a few hours north. The brief message details. I used every tool I had, cross-referencing reverse lookups with databases of long-term care facilities in that region. It was slow, frustrating work hitting dead ends. My fingers fumbled, my eyes burned, but I couldn't stop. Each failed search fueled my desperation. Was this a wild goose chase? A cruel, elaborate joke? No. The specificity, the mention of the estate, the raw urgency in the messages, it felt terrifyingly real. Hours later, as dawn began to gray the sky outside my window, I found it. A facility called Serenity Creek Manor, listed in the county the area code pointed to. Reviews were terrible, complaints about understaffing, neglect, isolation. It fit the description of a place someone would be put away in. A quick search showed the management company was obscure, linked to several other low-rated facilities. Might get twisted. This was it. The drive felt endless, a blur of highway miles and frantic thoughts. Memories of Grandpa John flashed in my mind, teaching me chess, showing me the old family photos, his quiet pride in my achievements even when my parents seemed indifferent. He was the kindest, sharpest man I knew. The funeral had been small, private. Robert had handled everything, saying it was for the best, less stress on Sarah. I hadn't questioned it, too bogged down in the latest crisis they needed me to fix. Now, the memory felt like a carefully constructed lie. Pulling up to Serenity Creek Manor confirmed my fears. The building was dated, the grounds sparse and unwelcoming. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of disinfectant and something else, sadness, resignation. A few residents sat listlessly in a common area. I approached the front desk, my voice trembling slightly as I asked for John Hargrove. The receptionist checked her computer, a standard, bored expression on her face. Hargrove? Yes, room 214. But nearby, a nurse, a woman with kind eyes and tired shoulders, overheard. She looked at me, then back at the receptionist, a subtle flicker of concern in her expression. When the receptionist turned away for a moment, the nurse quietly stepped closer. "Mr. Hargrove, are you family?" she murmured, her voice low and urgent. I nodded, barely able to speak. "Yes, I'm his grandson." Her eyes softened, then hardened slightly. "Things aren't right here," she whispered, glancing around. "The family that put him here, they don't visit. And the care he's getting, it's not what it should be considering the money that's supposed to be paid." She subtly slid a folded piece of paper into my hand as she brushed past. "Room 214. Be discreet. And be careful. They're powerful." It was her name and a small note, Eleanor. My heart hammered against my ribs. This woman was risking her job, maybe more, to give me this warning. It confirmed everything. They had put him here, and Eleanor knew something was wrong. I found room 214. Took a deep breath, bracing myself. What if it wasn't him? What if it was a mistake? But I pushed the door open. An old man sat by the window, sunlight catching his silver hair. Frail, yes, but unmistakably Grandpa John. His eyes, though tired, held that familiar spark. He looked at me, and a weak, trembling smile spread across his face. "Mason," he whispered, his voice dry but clear. "I knew you'd come." Tears welled up instantly, blurring my vision. I rushed to his side, collapsing into the chair beside him. "Grandpa, you're alive. They said you were dead." He reached for my hand, his grip surprisingly firm. "That's what they wanted you to think, son." He started talking, haltingly at first, then with growing clarity and outrage. After Grandma died, Robert and Sarah became relentless. They wanted control of his estate, his businesses, everything. He refused. He'd already made plans for his fortune, setting up trusts for Mason and planning significant donations to charities. He explicitly didn't want Robert and Sarah to squander his life's work. They couldn't accept it, Grandpa John said, his voice stronger now. They started saying I was losing my mind. Staged little incidents. Robert brought this slick lawyer, Randall, who drew up papers saying I was incompetent. They bribed a doctor, I'm sure of it, to sign off on a false medical evaluation. He shook his head, the memory painful. They got power of attorney through forgery, son. Forgery. Then they emptied my accounts, sold off assets. To get full control, they faked my death. A fake death certificate, a quiet funeral with an empty casket. They told everyone I died suddenly, heart failure. They told me you were gone or didn't care about me anymore. That's why I didn't see you. Over $25 million. Properties, businesses, investments. All of it stolen. And him, locked away in this place, declared dead to the world. He described the neglect. Minimal care, bland food, almost no interaction. His phone was confiscated. Visitors were screened. Nobody from his old life ever made it through. He was a prisoner. "Eleanor," he said, nodding towards the door. "She's a good woman. She saw what was happening. Saw the bills they paid didn't match the care. Saw they never visited. She found an old phone I'd managed to hide for a while and let me use her personal burner phone sometimes, when nobody was looking. I begged her to help me contact you, just on your birthday. I didn't know if you'd even get the message, if you even knew my number still. Eleanor. Her bravery was astounding. She saw something deeply wrong. Not just neglect, but potentially criminal behavior related to the finances. Later, Mason would learn Eleanor had seen suspicious discrepancies in Grandpa John's medical files, noting they were inconsistent with earlier records and seemed altered to portray him as severely incapacitated. She had even discreetly copied some of these, just in case. Her own grandmother had suffered from financial abuse, making her particularly sensitive and brave. As Grandpa John spoke, years of Mason's own quiet pain and sacrifice clicked into place. The family crises always needing money. The loans in his name. The missed opportunities. They weren't just irresponsible. They were actively, deliberately exploiting everyone around them, using him as a shield and a resource while they committed grand larceny and buried a man alive. You have to contact your Aunt Lydia, Grandpa John urged. Robert and Sarah. They cheated her 2 years ago out of that small plot of land and some trust fund money Grandma left her. She always suspected something wasn't right about their finances. They cut her off completely. Mason dimly remembered Aunt Lydia, a kind, sharp woman Robert and Sarah had demonized for years. The quiet weariness Mason had carried for so long evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve that felt like steel in his bones. The initial shock gave way to a burning, righteous fury. They had stolen his future, yes, but more importantly, they had stolen his grandfather's life, his legacy, his freedom. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. Getting Grandpa John out of the nursing home, even temporarily, was a complex legal maneuver that Mr. Thompson handled with impressive speed, leveraging Mason's initial police report and Eleanor's potential testimony. While Mr. Thompson began the official legal proceedings, Mason, Eleanor, and Aunt Lydia worked to gather more evidence. Eleanor, at great personal risk, used her access to covertly document inconsistencies in Grandpa John's care logs and the suspicious, altered medical reports the family's lawyer had submitted. She sent coded messages and photos to Mason. Aunt Lydia, when Mason contacted her, was stunned but resolute. She had always suspected something was deeply wrong. She revealed she still had her copy of Grandpa John's original will, drafted years before by an independent lawyer. Ironclad proof of his true intentions and the family's fraud. She also had old photos showing Grandpa John's distinct signature on other legal documents, a clear contrast to the clumsy forgery on the papers Robert used. She became an invaluable ally, providing not just evidence, but also emotional support, a true family connection Mason desperately needed. Mason, using his tech skills, delved into digital records. He found traces of burner phones used by his parents around the time of Grandpa John's death, hidden email accounts, and financial transactions layered through multiple accounts, including offshore ones that smelled strongly of Randall's involvement. He systematically built a digital map of their deceit, cross-referencing it with Aunt Lydia's documents and Eleanor's observations. The scale of the theft was staggering. Over $25 million in assets moved or liquidated. The confrontation wasn't just emotional. It was a trap meticulously planned with Mr. Thompson. The location, the exclusive country club Robert belonged to, a symbol of the status they craved and funded with stolen money. Mason arranged for the meeting to be discreetly audio and video recorded, perfectly legal in this state with one-party consent, and he was certainly a party. Mr. Thompson and a paralegal were stationed nearby. I texted Robert, Sarah, and Caroline, saying I had urgent information about Grandpa John's estate that needed to be discussed in person. I hinted that I'd found some discrepancies, just enough to pique their greed and make them nervous, but confident they could spin their usual lies. They arrived, Robert arrogant and impatient, Sarah with her practiced air of concerned fragility, Caroline tapping away on her phone, looking bored. "Mason, dear, what is this all about?" Sarah asked, her voice dripping fake sweetness. "It's about Grandpa John," I said, keeping my voice level, "and his estate." I started slowly, asking seemingly innocent questions about the funeral, the will, the timing. They gave their usual canned answers, the lies they perfected over 3 years. Then I started presenting the evidence, not all at once. I began with smaller financial transfers I discovered years ago, connecting them to recent, larger sums. Their smiles faltered. I showed them Aunt Lydia's copy of Grandpa John's real will. Robert's face flushed crimson. That's a fake. Grandpa's will is legal. I then presented the forged documents, placing them next to Aunt Lydia's historical documents showing Grandpa John's genuine signature. The silence was heavy, broken only by Sarah's sharp intake of breath. This is fabricated. Robert blustered, tried to grab the papers. Is it? I asked calmly, sliding the documents away. Mr. Thompson seems to think the forensic analysis will confirm the forgery. Mr. Thompson, stepping forward slightly from a nearby table, offered a curt nod. Cornered, Robert pulled out his phone. My lawyer will deal with this. He made a quick call. Moments later, a slick-looking man, Randall, approached our table, his expression sharp and dismissive. Mr. Hargrove, Randall said, addressing me, but looking at Robert, I advise you to cease this harassment. Your grandfather was legally declared incompetent. The will stands. Any further accusations are libelous. Actually, Mr. Randall, I replied, a cold satisfaction spreading through me. Mr. Thompson has already filed a formal complaint with the Bar Association regarding your potential involvement in the fraudulent transfer of assets and the fabrication of legal documents related to John Hargrove's estate. I showed him the notification on my phone screen, sent moments before he arrived. His smirk vanished. Their control shattered. Robert erupted in threats, half rising as if to physically intimidate me. You little ingrate. After everything we did for you, you won't get a dime. Sarah's fake tears turned to real fury. He was senile, confused. We were protecting him, and ourselves. You're just jealous. Caroline finally looked up from her phone, her face twisted in outrage. My inheritance. You can't just take that away. I need that money. He wasn't senile, I said, my voice cutting through their hysterics. He was lucid. He knew exactly what you were doing. He told me everything. I then played the video on my laptop. Grandpa John, frail but clear-eyed, calmly recounting their betrayal. Robert and Sarah, they betrayed me. They stole my life. They buried me alive for the money. The video ended. Silence fell again, absolute and heavy. Their faces were masks of shock and horror. They had been exposed, their lies laid bare. Leaving them stunned and sputtering was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. The barrage of calls and texts started immediately. Threats, desperate pleas, promises, insults. I blocked them on everything. The legal battle was brutal and draining, a true fight for justice. Robert, using hidden funds and Randall's slippery tactics, launched countersuits claiming I was manipulating Grandpa John, trying to force him back into my custody, trying to suppress evidence. Randall was relentless, challenging every piece of our evidence, attempting to discredit Eleanor and Aunt Lydia. But Mason and Mr. Thompson were ready. Mason's meticulously gathered digital evidence, cross-referenced with Aunt Lydia's historical documents and Eleanor's brave, detailed testimony about the facility and the family's suspicious activities, built an ironclad case. Mr. Thompson was a force of nature in court, dismantling Randall's arguments and exposing his own questionable ethics. Eleanor faced immense pressure, threats from the family, veiled warnings from her employer. Mason and Mr. Thompson worked tirelessly to protect her legally, filing injunctions against the family, ensuring her testimony was given under the strictest protections. Aunt Lydia, standing strong, testified about the family's long history of financial manipulation, adding historical weight to their current crimes. Cornered, Robert and Sarah grew desperate. They tried to empty foreign accounts, but Mason's financial tracking had anticipated this, and Mr. Thompson had already moved to freeze them. In a final, desperate act, they attempted to have Grandpa John forcibly removed from the safe location Mr. Thompson had arranged, claiming he was being held against his will. Mason had anticipated this too, and had security measures and police on standby. The attempt failed and only added to the charges against them. Mason and Mr. Thompson also controlled the public narrative. Carefully chosen pieces of evidence. The forged signature compared to the real one, snippets of Eleanor's findings about neglect despite high payments, Aunt Lydia's account of past betrayals, were strategically leaked to investigative journalists. The story hit local news outlets, turning public opinion firmly against Robert, Sarah, and Caroline, exposing their carefully constructed facade. The trial was the culmination of everything. The courtroom was packed. Mr. Thompson systematically presented the overwhelming evidence. Mason testified, detailing years of financial abuse and the shock of the birthday message, speaking with a quiet, unwavering resolve. Grandpa John, though frail, was present and testified with remarkable clarity and dignity, recounting how his own children had buried him alive for greed. Eleanor provided damning testimony about the falsified medical records and neglect. Aunt Lydia's account cemented the family's pattern of behavior. Robert, Sarah, and Caroline crumbled under cross-examination, their lies unraveling, their true, ugly natures fully exposed to the public. Randall's attempts to defend them were futile. The judge's verdict was a complete and total victory. All stolen assets, totaling over $25 million, including properties and businesses, were returned to Grandpa John and Mason. Robert, Sarah, and Caroline were found guilty of massive fraud, elder abuse, and theft. The judgment against them was enormous, guaranteeing their financial ruin. The judge didn't just issue a civil ruling. Based on the evidence, she explicitly recommended criminal prosecution. Randall's professional conduct was referred to the Bar Association for investigation. Eviction day arrived a week later. Sheriffs were present. Movers hauled boxes onto the lawn of the sprawling estate property Robert and Sarah had claimed as their own. Robert raged, screaming threats at Mason. Sarah sobbed hysterically, clinging to the doorframe. Caroline stood frozen, phone in hand, perhaps finally grasping the reality that her lifestyle was gone forever. Mason watched from a short distance, standing with Grandpa John, Eleanor, Aunt Lydia, and Mr. Thompson. There was no joy, just a quiet, profound sense of finality. When Robert screamed, "You can't do this. It's our house," Mason stepped forward, his voice cold and steady. "It was never yours. You stole it. I'm just taking back what's rightfully ours." They were forced into a battered old sedan, the contrast with their usual luxury cars stark and humiliating. As it drove away, Mason could hear their screams and accusations, turned not just on him, but on each other, the lies and betrayals finally consuming them. Mason and Grandpa John moved into the main estate house. It was huge, filled with ghosts of the past and the family's recent occupancy, but it was theirs. They began the process of restoring it, filling it with light and life. They planted the massive rose garden Grandpa John had always dreamed of. Grandpa John's health and spirit improved dramatically. He walked in the garden every morning, the stress of his ordeal lifting. Through Mr. Thompson, Mason learned of the family's fate. Criminal charges were filed. Bankruptcy was inevitable. They became social pariahs, their names synonymous with greed and elder abuse. Their infighting became legendary. Letters arrived from Mason and Grandpa John. Pathetic pleas, desperate demands, blame. Mason read them, then burned them in the fireplace, letting the flames consume their empty words. He severed all ties, changed his phone number, blocked them on every conceivable platform. They were gone. The reclaimed wealth was vast, more than Mason or Grandpa John needed. Together, they established a major philanthropic foundation in Grandpa John's name. Its mission, to provide legal aid and financial support to victims of elder abuse, and to support healthcare professionals who blow the whistle on neglect and fraud, specifically honoring Eleanor's bravery. They also ensured Aunt Lydia was taken care of, acknowledging her past losses and vital support. Sitting on the porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky, Grandpa John sighed, a sound of contentment. "I thought I would die in that place," he whispered. "You won't lose this one," Mason replied, putting a hand on his shoulder. Not ever again. You're stronger than I ever knew, Grandpa John said, his voice thick with emotion. You did what I couldn't. I did what they forced me to, Mason said. But he knew it was more. He had faced the worst kind of betrayal and found the strength to fight back, to protect the man he loved, and in doing so, saved himself. The weight was gone. The scars remained, a reminder of the battle, but they no longer defined him. He had lost a family, but he had built a true one, founded not on blood or obligation, but on love, trust, and justice. They sat in comfortable silence, the house glowing warmly behind them, a place they had taken back, a future they had built together.